by accident.
Oh, by accident. Okay. All right. All right, guys. So let's see what's going on. What's going on? He liked my comment, but he's not here. So I wonder where he's at.
Oh, Paul, can you unmute him? He's already in, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, I just saw. Sorry, my bad. All right, nice, Joe. So Jason is here. Hey, Jason.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How you feeling?
Well, and you?
Good, man. Good. Good news. I'm using a different computer today, so I don't have to bug you to switch here.
All right, you're in business.
All right. All right, guys. So let's just get right into it because we only have about an hour for this lecture. We're not going to go over this one. I can't go over because I have a hard stop. But previously, we went over the SARs. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you all. In the last webinar / lecture, can you guys see my screen?
What did you say?
Can you guys see the Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So in the last in our last meeting, we went over this security assessment report template, which, as I explained, is the meat and potato of a security assessment. And we actually got to do a couple examples of how to assess a security control. In those scenarios, the security controls were satisfied. So what I want to do is go over as many examples as we can today of security controls and do at least one or two that are other than satisfied so that we can talk about risk. All right, so the last time we did an AU control, AU1, and then we did an SA1. Is there any control family anybody on the call would like to throw out there? Okay, I guess it's dealer's choice. So I'm gonna pick one at random. I like the IA group. I think it's an easy one to explain. We'll go over this one, right? We'll go over this. We'll go over IA 442. All right. So I'm just gonna go through a simulation by myself, and then for the second one, I think I might have someone kind of roll with me, right? So I'm looking at this one. Once again, you want to make sure that you are cognitive of the control name, because the control name tells you the theme of what you're testing for, right? This is talking about identifier management, identify user status, right? So identifier is usually how we identify people digitally, right? I know that, all right, and how we manage them, how we manage what we use to identify people in the digitally, right? Rael has a PJ Pros account, right? Gemtessa, so it's rgemtessa at pjpros.com. That is an identifier because anything that account does, we attribute it to Rael's action, right? And IA control family is also about identification and authorization. So it makes sense that we start thinking in terms of identification, right? We don't need to think in terms of audited because, well, that's a whole control family. We don't need to think in terms of contingency plan or disaster recovery or media protection because those are other security controls. We are thinking identification, right? And this to kind of keep you from, because I've seen a lot of people that they run into these rabbit holes and they start responding not to the question, but they start making up like other responses. Well, no, stick to the theme and you'll at least be in the right ballpark. So anyways, that is the theme for this one that we're doing as our example. The assessment objective is determine if the organization manages individual identifiers by uniquely identifying each individual as the organization defined characteristic, identifying individual status. It's a tongue twister, right? You have to get used to this. Their English is like, whoa, sometimes, right? It's like, why can't you just tell me what you want directly instead of making up these words, right? But eventually you kind of get used to it. Once again, I have an assessment objective. My very first step is, what the heck does it mean? Can I feel what they're talking about? And I say use the word feel, not saying that I know the definition of characteristics, I know the definition of organization, but can I feel or can I paint a picture of what they're saying? Can I create an example in my head of what they're saying? If you can't do that, that's where you need to practice as an assessor, because if you can't do that, you're gonna have a hell of a time doing the rest of the work. because you don't know your root. You don't even know what the heck they're talking about in the first place. So anyways, the best way to feel what they're saying is to break it down, right? And break it into components. Does determine if the organization manages individual identifiers, right? Again, if you don't know what identifier is, you should probably Google, YouTube some videos to understand what an identifier is in a computer. As I've explained to you, it's really just simply a user name, right? When I think of identifiers, I dumb it down to username, right? So they manage those usernames by uniquely identifying each individual. So unique is a keyword here, right? So what they're talking about is it has to be unique, right? Rahel Jim, I'm like, don't use government name out here on the recording, right? So Bob Jones, B Jones at pjpros.com is Bob, whose last name is Jones, right? Bob Smith is B Smith at pjpros.com, B Smith, right? B Smith is not to be confused with Bob Smith, is not to be confused with Bob Jones because they have separate identifiers, right? To the point where even if you have two Bob Smith at work, right? Then well, one identifier should be Bob Smith, and the other one should be Bob Smith 1 or Bob Smith 2, right? Every single username on your network, all they're saying is every single username should be unique, right? Now, that's what this part says. You have identifiers, are they unique, right? That's what we need to determine, right? As the organization defined characteristics identifying individual status. Now, this part gets a little tricky. And the part that gets tricky is you have to be careful when I use the word defined, right? In the beginning, they're saying, do you manage individual identifiers by, is it unique, right? But then is it unique in accordance to organization defined characteristics, right? So now they're saying that it needs to be unique, right? That's what the first part says. And the second part is saying that that uniqueness should follow your organization should have written, because defined means is it written somewhere on an official document. So on an official document, do they have what your identifier should be listed as, right? If you work for PJ Pros, it's first initial, last name. That's what we do, right? Some organization is first name dot last name, right? Some places, I don't know what they do. Well, that's usually what you see, right? That's usually the format, right? That we use. There's a lot of places. Some places don't even use your first and last name. They use like maybe your first name and maybe some random letters, right? So everybody does it differently. But as an organization, we need to make sure that it is defined and written somewhere, right? So you want to be careful when you assess this, because now you're assessing to see if they actually do it. Do they have identifiers that are unique? And then you also want to see if they have it written somewhere, what those characteristics should be, right? So at PJ Pros, we should have written in some type of document that says that all our username will have first initial, that last name at PJ Pros. And also we need to make sure that the system itself, we are managing it so that we don't have duplicated usernames, okay? I want to pause right there and see if there are any questions. Okay. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I have a question for that.
Yeah, what's up?
Did you put that? They don't have to put that in SSP or in a policy.
Yeah, that's a great question. So they're both, right? So as an assessor, the first place I'm going to check is the SSP, right? Because the SSP will have the implementation statements that talks about how we comply with this control requirement, right? So once I discover how we comply with that control requirement, that's what I'm going to behold in the organization to what they say, right? Once we determine that, then I need to see this defined part. It doesn't need to, it could be in the SSP system description, but generally it should be in some type of a policy or procedure document. You cannot use the implementation statement as the defined part. It needs to be written somewhere else. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to take a slight detour to the control above me, and I want to show you guys a stark difference between two different controls. Here, this control, as we talked about, it talks about if you actually do it. Do you do it in accordance to what's defined? Here, if we read this real quick, determine if the organization defines a characteristic to be used to identify individual status. Here, they're simply asking you, is it defined? Is it written somewhere, right? So here, the only thing I'm testing for is to see if it's written somewhere. Not to be confused with here, because here, does it matter? This is, do they define the management of? Is that do they manage individual identifiers? I need proof that shows that they actually do it in accordance to what is written. Here, I just need proof that it is written. Hope that you guys can see the difference there, right? In fact, you can also see, you know, into examine is the only option here because I want to see if it's written. Here, they're like, no, we want to know if they do it. So we're not going to examine is not really an option. You either interview or you do a technical test, right? So I'm going to write the, I'm not going to pull up the entire SSP. I'm just going to write down an implementation statement that that meets, I get my notepads open, there it is. I'm going to write an implementation statement that meets the assessment objective, but not all the way, okay? So the implementation statement that I'm going to write will read as PJ Pros first I'm going to explain identifiers. I feel like I'm misspelled. I guess I did prior. All right. Identifiers include username, usernames. Hold on 1 second. Needed to access our Microsoft Windows environment, and what else do we keep here? And network devices. All right. So we have Microsoft Windows environment, right, for our Windows machine, our Office Windows machine, our Office 365. We use that. That's an identifier. And another identifier is our network devices, which include our firewall and network devices, right? Because as a, you know, if you're writing an implementation statement for this, if you don't know what where your identifiers are definitively, you've lost yourself already, right? So I'm going to say we do that. And the reality is this, right? If you talk to a system admin, they'll tell you, hey, if I go on those, if I go on any of these things, if I go on a Windows machine, and if I go on a network device, if I try to create two of the same name, if I try to create B Smith twice, it won't let me, right? Both applications are configured to ensure that all usernames, identifiers are unique, right? In addition, I need to address where it's defined, right? The characteristics, let's say, you know, our access control policy has the unique identifier, right? Listed to say that all identifiers on the network must utilize first initial last name. For all identifiers on the network must utilize the format of first initial last name, right? This requirement is defined in the PJ Pros access control policy, right? All right, so this is my implementation statement, not my observation. This is just what we'll say this is what the ISO wrote, right? For this control in the SSP, all right? Hope you guys are following me so far, right? I'm gonna pause right there, right? And ask, does anyone need me to reread this so that they can understand and feel what the statement is saying? Otherwise, I'm going to assume you know what the statement is saying and it makes sense to you. All right.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's
Yeah,
go ahead.
but okay. Why we are in identification, but you are talking about access control policy. Isn't this should be written in also IA policy or what? I
Great
don't,
question.
that's why sometimes I get confused for this.
Yeah. So what you're looking for, Paul, is a word for word match of policy to control family, right?
Yeah.
Some organization can do that, but I think that's an inefficient way to use your time. Now, I'll tell you what we do, right? In our organization,
Yeah.
IA control and the AC control, they both talk about access, right?
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I don't need an IA policy. I don't need an AC policy. I just write an AC policy and I make sure that all my IA control requirements are listed there, right? And if you go to my IA control, my SSP, for my IA control family, IA1, I reference the access control policy. I don't need two separate documents to keep up with. I try to consolidate where I can. Does that make sense?
Okay.
But that's a great
Okay.
question and a good call out because it it's not a fit, right? So you do want to question it, but just trust and believe that IA controls for us at least is being addressed in our access control policy
That's
document.
it. Yeah.
Okay, but great call out though. Great call out. It makes perfect sense why you thought that. So let's continue. We've got the statement, right? I'm now the assessor. I'm no longer the ISO that wrote this. Okay, guys. So I hope you have a good imagination. This is the statement that I wrote in my SSP, right? And now I've read this. I understand what this means. I read the implementation statement. I understand what that means. As I mentioned in the previous class, I could simply interview someone, right, of authority, and I could say, hey, in this case, it looks like a system admin would probably be the best person, and I could take a look at the access control policy and be done. But again, from my opinion, a good assessor goes for a technical test first. Okay, so how do I technically test this, right? Well, for starters, I've got two different environments, at least two, right? I've got a Microsoft Windows environment, I've got a network environment, right? So what I'm going to ask, because this guy is telling me that we have identifiers that include username, unique username and username, basically, right? We don't care about the password. We're talking about identifiers, right? So the first thing I'm going to ask for, I'm going to say, hey, you say that you have unique identifiers in your Microsoft Windows environment. Go inside your Active Directory because that's what you use to manage your user accounts, right? I think everybody here knows that. Go inside the application and attempt to create two different usernames, and I want to see the error message that comes up, right? And so the system admin should go in there and try to create two and show the error that comes up, right? That's one thing I can request of them because they have stated that they do that in their Windows environment. And I also want to see the same thing in their network environment as well. I want to see how it's done on the firewall and network for firewall and network devices. Go ahead, try to create two of the same accounts. Does it error out? I want to see that, capture a screenshot of that. A second option is, hey, system admin, I want to see a setting like in your your back-end settings where there's a checkbox that said all identifier must be unique. I need to see something that was done, or I need to see you attempt to do, or I can even try, if I have access to it, I can try to create two usernames at the same time and then capture the screenshot myself. Chances are you probably won't as an assessor. But I want to see that in action. I want to see that in play, or at least a screenshot of it, right? If you want a screenshot, or if you don't want to do a meeting with me to actually show me, right? This is probably one of the things, and sometimes you just want to have these questions listed out. All right, I need the system admin to do these things. Let me get on a call with the system admin for about an hour. All right, system admin, I need you to show me, create two of the same username on your Windows. Oh, it allowed it. I know this control failed. Oh, it denies it. I know this control is good. Okay, so that is how you technically test, because I understand keep in mind, guys, because I can feel the assessment objective and I can feel the implementation statement, I now know what I need, what proof I need, right? And then the second part, of course, is to read the access control policy and see where it's defined that the characteristics of the identifier needs to be first initial, last name, right? And once I have that, then I read it and I see that it's there, we're good to go. Okay, I want to pause right there and see if anybody is lost in terms of how I navigate to what I want to test for. Okay. All right. So now that I've navigated that, let's go ahead and work through a scenario. And I'll tell you guys a scenario, right? So in my scenario, I reached out to the system admin and I've asked them for to create multiple username and see what error comes up and send me the screenshot. They sent those to me, right? But then when I picked up the access control policy as directed by the ISO in the implementation statement, I realized that they did not define the characteristics of the user of the identifiers. Okay, it was not defined in the access control policy. So this is a partial compliance, right? They've complied with it on a technical level, but on a policy level, on a definition level, it's not been defined, right? So now I'm going to move on to my observation. Okay. Let's say I just did that. So at the time, 3/7/2023 at 12:26 p.m. Upon review, the PJ Pros system admin supplied evidence that their environments, that their identifiers are unique. The evidence showed that their Microsoft AD, and for our network devices, we have the Sonic Wall admin, and for our firewall, excuse me, it's the Sonic Wall admin portal. And the network devices, we use Netgear. Would not allow identifiers to be created if they are identical. Okay. Now we're not done yet because I still need the definition part. Upon review of the PJ Pros access control policy, it was determined that the characteristics of the unique identifiers was not defined per the system admin. The unique all identifiers should be listed as first initial last name, right? So I've listed this, now I need to list out my artifacts. Of course, there's a screenshot, right? Maybe AD screenshot, maybe it's what they call it, JPEG, right? And then the screenshot of the network devices, Sonic Wall, screenshot, .jpeg. I hope you guys will use your imagination with me. I'm not just writing this letter out. This is actually the file that they gave me, and they screenshot it and they sent it to me, right? So I got that, right? And then the Netgear screen .jpeg, right? So I'm gonna list that there. And then maybe the PJ Pros access control policy .pdf, right? So I'm basically listening and saying, these are evidence that I have, right? Of course, this one didn't pass, right? But these are the evidence that I have, and I've kept them in a folder. That's gonna be submitted once the SAR is done, okay? So again, I've created a picture to say, hey, I'm not gonna say this control passed. I've seen situations where, you know, this statement says, PJ Pro system admin supplied evidence that the identifiers are unique. The evidence showed that their Microsoft AD, Sonic Wall admin, Netgear portal would not allow identifiers to be created if they're identical. Go to screenshot, you see it, error, can't create this user account, can't create this user account, right? And it's really, I don't know, do you guys want me to show you, like, trying to create a second identifier? I'm trying to skip all this other stuff so I can save time, but if you guys want me to pull up an Azure AD and show you, that the error comes out. If that helps you to picture this, I can. But it, you know, again, we collect the screenshots and it's done. I've seen places where instead of writing this, they would say something like, I've seen people do this. Oops, this is not my, wait a minute, let me freeze paint here. Sorry guys, bear with me. I need to, am I in the right place? No, it's right here. Oops, all right. It's not the right one. Here, okay, this is where we are. All right, I've seen places that do this, right? Oops, sorry guys. That's the whole control past, right? I've seen people that says, I've seen people do this. They put the time and date, then say upon review of PJ presides control policy, paste the determinative statement. It was determined that the organization manages individual identified by uniquely identify each individual as the organization defined characteristic identifying individual status. Now, I know everybody that's ever worked with me know this is not going to fly, right? Because this is literally a copy and paste. This does not show that you actually assessed the control, right? You can't do that. When you are, just like when you write your implementation statement, you need to be specific. When you also write your observation and evidence, you also need to be specific, right? What did you see? What did you do, right? Prefer technical test over an interview, right? That shows, right? And the reality is this, guys, right? You want to show off as a good assessor. You don't want to, they might not tell it to your face, but if you're someone that copies and pastes an entire SAR, right, it's going to show, right? It's going to show in the level of work. So if you want to be that person that stands out, write something specific to it, right? But anyways, let's move on. So the second part of this, I have listed as not compliant. The top part, they do well technically, they just didn't define it. Someone just needs to update the daggone document, right? So we're going to put implementation status partially implemented. The assessment result is that they're satisfied. And yes, even if it's partially satisfied, it's either all or nothing for the assessment objective. Now let's talk about identified risk, okay? Let's talk about identified risk. What is risk, all right? I always like to use, an example of a water dam, right? Let me just, when I talk about risk, vulnerabilities, and threats, okay? So I'll pull up this, this dam here. I think this is a good one. Don't get picky. All right, so you guys can see this picture right here, right? So this is a water dam, right? The dam is there to hold back the water, right? Now let's pretend off in this picture, it's a village. Don't ask me why they decided to buy property there, but they decided to buy a whole bunch of houses there, right? So now the threat is the water, right? Because if the water goes on the village, it'll flood everything, right? The threat is the water. The security control is the dam, because this is what's controlling the water, controlling the threat from penetrating, right, inside the asset. The asset is the village, okay? A vulnerability would be a crack in the wall, right? So because now a vulnerability is something that a threat can exploit to get in, right? So a crack in the wall might help the water seep through, make it a hole bigger and bigger until it's all the way in and it's flooded, right? So again, threat is the water in this case. The security control is the dam wall, and the vulnerability would be a crack in the wall, right? If the threat were to exploit the vulnerability, we are at risk of property damage. We're at risk of lives being lost, right? Those two things could essentially happen, right? If we do not mitigate the risk, right? If we don't fix it. All right, so when you think risk, think of, when I always tell people, because risk is a little bit hard to get a good stronghold on. So when you think of risk, think of, what do I have to lose, right? Think of somebody being dramatic, right? Right, you risk my life, right? You know, people don't say that. You risk my life because you almost got me killed. Being killed is the risk, right? Your life is the value which you almost lost. So I always tell people, if you want to dumb it down on risk, just think of, what am I at risk of losing, So I see a lot of people have issues with trying to figure out what the identified risk is. So I always think, well, if we don't, in this case, if we don't define, if we don't write down what the unique character, what the unique username and passwords are, what are we at risk of? What does that put us in risk of, right? Now I'll give you guys another guide, because sometimes it's hard to think of what the risks are. So, you know, what I always tell people is, if you pull up the NIST 863-3, which talks about digital identity. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick for you guys. All right, if you Google search NIST 863-3, then we pull this document up. All right, so the 863-3, I should have downloaded the PDF, but anyways, I think I'll get there if I'm patient enough. They have, we're not gonna talk about digital identity today, but one thing I want to direct your attention to is this. Actually, no, I think the SSP template has this as well. You can find this in a lot of places. NIST uses a lot, but their risk guidance, I don't really like it too much because it's not that helpful. At least I don't think it is. But yeah, so here they have a lot of different ideas for you to take risk, for you to choose from. Inconvenience, distress, or damage to your reputation. That's a risk, right? Financial loss, you can lose money or be liable for something legally. That's another risk. Harm to agency, program, or public interest. That's another risk, right? You can release sensitive information. You might be at risk of releasing sensitive data. Again, personal safety. That's another type of risk. And a civil or criminal violation, you can be at risk of getting sued civilly or criminally, or taken to court criminally. Those are different risks to choose from. So I always like coming here because it helps me to brainstorm different ideas of what the organization's at risk for. You know, it helps you, and it's more formal, you know what I'm saying? This is just my little shortcut of get this done. If you have, there's other risks I'm sure that you can think of, but if it makes sense, it's something that you can, a loss of some sort, go for it. But otherwise, just follow my formula and I think you'll be in good shape. So anyways, it gets a little tricky when it's documentation. And in this case, we said that it's a documentation issue. They do it, but it's not defined. So what are we at risk for? If we don't have the proper guidance in our organization to tell people the characteristics for identifiers. Well, if we don't have it defined, then people might not be able to follow it, right? And then what could end up, in my mind, is someone could create a user account that doesn't follow the format. Now, what are we at risk for if someone doesn't follow the format? Instead of B. Smith, now we, first initial, last name, now we have somebody actually Bob.Smith, right, being created on the, their information being created. It's more of an, this is such a low risk. It's definitely not personal safety. It's definitely not criminal violation, right? I mean, if anything, it'll make it harder for people to hack you because now you're not following the format. Harm to agency, programs, or public interest. Not really. The only thing I can think of right now is just inconvenience. And this is where it becomes a courtroom conversation, guys. And I want you guys to understand that this is not a black and white situation. This is not a 1+1 situation. We're not trying to figure out a 90-degree angle of a triangle or something like that, right? We're simply trying to make sense, right? Make it make sense. The only thing that I could think of, and feel free to chime in if you can think of something, because I'm actually thinking here. The only thing I could think of is such a very low threat. I guess inconvenience or distress to damage. Man, I really cornered myself on this one. I'm trying not to sound over dramatic and say, people are gonna die if you don't have their username listed right. Because they're not. You're not gonna lose any money. At least I can't think of an angle for you to lose money. What I can think of right now is I just for the sake of time, I'm just gonna say inconvenience to reputation, right? Inconvenience to reputation because it, you have username and account formats all over the place, and it makes it look bad, right? Or maybe we should think of it. Yeah, there's the only thing I can think of. I mean, you have to list something else. Someone want to say something?
How about your identity being stolen?
But how does me not writing your username properly lead to your identity being stolen?
Yep.
I'm really asking. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
How does that?
I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, you are asking if we don't use the identity.
I know, right? But
Say it again, Paul.
I said, you were asking us if, how about if we don't use our identity properly, right?
No. I'm asking because the risk here is that it is not defined what the characteristics of your identifier should be, right? Remember, they're saying that
Yeah.
the organization defined characteristics. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like impersonation, because if there's no defined way, then you are not able to tell like the legitimate names from the illegitimate ones. So if there's I don't know if it is, I'm just suggesting. So I don't know, maybe risk of impersonation, like having, for example, the example you use, I think you said B Smith or something. Then
Right.
if you see another name like Smith B, because you didn't have it defined, you are not able to tell which of them is correct, and it might be overlooked by maybe another system admin. Okay, since we don't have anything defined,
I like
probably
thinking. Okay. I like that. No, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. Timothy, what are you doing here? You're not a compliance guy.
I'm thinking of it.
You're thinking about going to compliance. Okay. All right. Cool. Timothy's one of my cloud admins. He helps us with a lot of the Microsoft work here. But yeah, no, that's great, man. Thank you for I see now I need to reach out to you whenever I have compliance questions. I like that. It makes sense. It's not that I just like it. It makes sense, right? Does anyone need them to repeat that, like sort of the angle of what the potential risk is?
If I understand, and he was saying that, I just want to say to see if I'm understanding very well.
Yeah.
Okay, he was saying that if we did not have the defined characteristic, for instance, if I say my name is Paul Josu, but another person also could come again, we can have two Paul Josu, in the system, and they will be difficult to know who is who.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like, for instance, if I want to hack your organization, and I know you're like, P just so, right? And so what Timothy is saying is that I could become a lower level employee and I could have them give me the name Paul just so, but because you are like tier 3, all I have to do is call. If I call service desk, like, hey, I need my account unlocked, but then they look very similar, nobody's going to question because the names are off, right? So it's harder to manage this.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so impersonation is something that is possible. We can defend that. And by the way, guys, I got stuck, right? And one thing you know about me, I don't mind telling you guys when I get stuck. I don't pretend to know everything, right? And Timothy was able to unstuck me. If Timothy wasn't here, what I would need to do is do a detour and go do some research, check online, right? Why is it important for us to have similar characteristics, right, of an identifier on a network? Why? Right? I'm sure somebody has what, you know, maybe Timothy has said, or maybe what somebody else would have said, right? There's multiple ways to go about it. It's up to you as the analyst to do your research and come up with that, right? All right, so let's continue down with our scenario, right? We've said that, and I need to pull up this 863 real quick again, because I want to see what, which one fits, right? So with someone impersonation, someone literally coming in and doing harm or danger to our network because they, and that could really cause unauthorized release of sensitive information. Feels like something I could talk about, because then once you get in the network, you now are able to escalate yourself, right, by impersonating another person, and you'll be able to get access, you know, to their stuff, right? So the identified risk is unauthorized release of sensitive information, right? Likely, and this is, sorry guys, I almost digress. I'm gonna focus, stay focused, Paul. Your ADD's kicked in. All right, so the likelihood level, what's the likelihood of this happening? To me, is low, right? The good news is you make the recommendation, your system owner makes the finalization of these risk levels, right? I mean, as well as all the risk, in fact, but it's up to you to do the initial background work. So the likelihood of this happening, to me, is low. And what is the impact? If someone were to actually take advantage of this and hit that attack vector the way we're thinking, which is very low likelihood,
It's gonna be low too.
I think
well,
high.
we're not talking about likelihood now. We're talking about it actually happens. There's a very low chance of it happening.
But I
Okay.
think
But
when it happens, it's gonna be high.
I feel like it could be high.
It can be high, you know?
Yeah. I feel like it's high, between high and moderate, right?
Yeah.
And right now I'm gonna go with moderate. But I could definitely see an argument for high. But you're not my system owner anyway, so I'm not gonna listen to you.
Oh God.
So my risk exposure level is automatically populated, which is low, right, guys? And then my risk statement should now explain that whole conversation we've been having, right? Now I need to explain myself as to why I think it's unauthorized release of sensitive information, right? In the event that the organization does not define and utilize characteristics or identifiers, and this is actor could create an identifier similar to a order to make it easier to manipulate the system and gain access. Right? So I don't know. I could probably write this English a little better, but I've basically explained to them why I think this is, right? And that's what your risk statement should be. It's an elaboration of your identified risk. Recommendation for mitigation, guys. I know we're running short on time already. Man, we only did one control. Recommendation for mitigation. How do we fix this? Well, somebody need to update the damn access control policy, right? So update the access control policy to include a definition of characteristics required for identifiers on the network, right? SSP implementation differentiation, we talked about this the other day, which is really, does the SSP require an update, right? That implementation statement we went to is correct in itself, right? I mean, it's incorrect. Don't get this twisted, right? Just because the access control policy doesn't say it. Now, if there's another document that says it, let's say the firewall policy says it or something like that, or the audit policy says it, well then yes, there is an SSP implementation statement differential, because this statement will then need to say, audit policy, not access control, right? However, in our scenario, let's say that it should have said it in the access control policy, but it didn't. So in which case, the implementation statement should remain as the access control policy that needs to change. So I'm going to put a note in this scenario to say that we do not have a differential. I hope that makes sense. If not, let me know.
Question.
Yeah, sure. What's up?
Okay, so under the recommendation for mitigation, can it be also like monitoring it at all times so we could avoid, like mitigate the vulnerability? I mean, if it's
you could, and I don't want to shut down your answer, but remember the original. Don't lose sight of the original problem, which is to define. Now, when you say
documented, okay, got it.
yeah. So it's easy to definitely get lost in translation. So I was trying to stay to your North Star there. There's something wrong with this field, so it needs to be fixed. But it should have my name on it, but it shouldn't be this. But I have to work out some Excel tricks to get that. But it'll be my name on here, because sometimes it's a team of assessors that's working on the assessment. So it might be your name, might be somebody else's name, right? And so they want to know who's assessing what. And once again, prior assessment result is if this was a second year assessment. So put that here, prior risk exposure level. If this is a second year assessment, you basically get the risk exposure grade from the previous year. Okay, in case it's different, you can compare contrast here. All right.
I have another.
Yeah, go ahead, Joanne.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the assessor POC, where you initial, you stamp whatever word, for your name, it goes back to the SSP where you have like the document revision history. So once you're done, you assess everything. The assessor should have a position where you said, okay, you put assessor POC, but it's your name as an ISSO because they're the one who, created it, prepared it. But I want to point, where do the assessors sign it? Because it's here, it's in the in a Excel template, but on SSP, where do you put that? I mean, do you see where it says author, where under the document revision history? I mean, I'm just asking.
So you're trying to see where does the assessor get to put their autograph, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think this is, that's a good question. I don't know if the SAR has it. Hold on one second. Let me.
Oh, no report of course.
It does?
Okay, for instance, maybe I ship it. When we do the assessment for the XSP, I think there's also, I think it's PL planning, program planning or something, there that you can put your name that you assess, all the documents. So you don't have to put anything on the assessment.
Wait, I didn't hear him well. I'm so sorry.
What I'm saying is that, okay, there's another control that the SSP assessment, is talking about.
Yeah.
I think it was a PL, I can forget, Paul will tell us.
Yeah.
And then you said that, hey, I, access the XSP and all other related documents that is pertaining to the organization.
Thank you.
Okay. But there's no like major, and I'm looking at the SAR as well. I don't even see the actual SAR report itself, and I don't even see a section for you to sign. I think that they don't really, they have the revision history here, right? So you can put the author there as well for the SAR itself. So you can always do it like that. But But yeah, and speaking of signature as well, are you, I don't know if you guys are aware, but in the actual SSP, right, more than likely you're supporting a federal government, right, agency, right, and you're drafting the SSP for them. I don't know if you guys are aware, but you're not, even though you're the ISO that drafted the whole SSP, you're not supposed to put your name as even the author of that document. It should be your immediate report, your immediate federal report, because as a contractor, you're not supposed to put your actual name on a federal document.
Oh, wow.
So so you really are supposed to do the work and have them just sign, like maybe your manager or wherever the most immediate person is that's a full-time federal employee. You shouldn't be putting your name on their documents. So I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I was not. So in other words, they will say that this is the assessor who actually did that, right? Like,
Yeah, or the ISO that drafted that
oh,
SSP.
exactly. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah, so I hope to go through more samples. Man, these things, they take a while to talk out. Right. But I don't want you guys to think, oh man, it takes an hour per control and you've got what, like 200 of them, and they want it all done by next week or last week. But it takes, I mean, you get faster over time doing it, but it's really an exercise that you do in your own head, and you have to be very meticulous in the sense that you're keeping track of your questions that you have. You're keeping track of people you need to meet, your schedule, so you have to have that task in mind in a sense, right? Like if there was an issue with this control, you want to have some type of a color code to say, okay, I'm gonna come back to this one and ask this question. Maybe keep your questions on the side because it's an Excel spreadsheet. You can't really put, comment button sucks for this one, right? But you have to kind of have a system, be methodical with your action. We have about 4 minutes left. Are there any questions, guys? Any general questions?
I'm not sure if it's a stupid question, but
Never a stupid question.
hey, sometimes I think it is. Okay, so you have the Excel here right now, the Excel format. I know it has to be authorized. Sometimes not all documents, it's authorized if they want that format for it to be that way. But how do they provide that to you, or you create that Excel format to, like, as in, like, it could be like a SAR kind of thing right now, right?
Yeah, so this is what I use as the SAR, right? For me personally.
Got
it all depends on
it.
it all depends on the organization. So like for us, we use this spreadsheet, right? Some places use different tools like CSAM. I don't know if anybody has CSAM experience, but CSAM is a very expensive application. It's a cloud application where you log into and it has the different fields and say, put this here, put this answer here. What are your risks? Put it in, and you click, and you click on next, right? And it's very user-friendly, right? I know an Excel spreadsheet can be very difficult for some people because you're trying to move stuff around, free span and all of that. So yeah, other people use tools. Don't get me wrong, there's still agencies that use a good old-fashioned spreadsheet as well.
Yeah.
And even the people that use CSAM, sometimes they download in the spreadsheet and then they upload again because it's so much easier for them. And then there are places that I'm sure probably use Word document, right? It all depends on the organization and what you're comfortable with. This is a FedRAMP template, so I'm sure a lot of people utilize this, but there's a reason why FedRAMP put it on a spreadsheet so you can just knock things out quickly.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have
Okay.
any type of this lesson in the future also, or it's only one today and tomorrow?
Yeah, so our final part for this webinar series is going to be, is it tomorrow, Jason? Tomorrow, 7 o'clock? We have it tomorrow, 7 p.m. So
No, tomorrow at 7.
yeah, tomorrow we're going to be going over a POAM, plan of action and milestone reports, right? So we're going to bring it all together and kind of have that part to close out a webinar series. We're going to have more webinar series in the near future. I want to start having more of these things with you guys, but so just more to come, just based on availability and timing and all of that. And then we also have our career development program, which a good amount of folks that are on this call are in, right? So they're actually going to be drafting their SARs, right, and getting that reviewed. So we have that option as well. And yeah, I mean, this all.
You said, sorry, you were talking about the program?
Yes, our career development program, which is our basically is our the program where you come in, right, and we actually have you guys provide us with cybersecurity services. You touch real systems and you actually draft, actual security documentation. So yeah.
So how do we enter to that program?
Good question. So you go to pjcourses.com.
Yeah, can you send it to our email?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, pjcourses.com / oh gosh, career. Career Academy. Yep, there you go. Yep, just follow this, and it's gonna basically give you the breakdown of everything that we do, right, with our Career Academy program.
Okay.
Okay.
How much it costs?
Prices are different. I think you can pay as you go for as low as $5 a month. But yeah, I think the prices are, they vary, but I mean, we always generally recommend that you go through the entire program. So you're looking at about, good 6 months, right? So I think you want to budget. If we're talking about you want to get your certifications, you want to get your experiences, you should probably budget between 5 to 7K for the program, and I think that should have you covered for the 6 to 9 month period.
Okay.
All right.
So when does the program start? I know it's not, I don't know anything that, but when does it start?
Yeah, so the next one we're actually going to be kicking off. Actually, you know what? Let me not even say that. We're working in Agile these days, right? So one thing that I've learned about Agile is that it gives us the flexibility. So what I've been thinking now is kind of making the enrollment window more flexible. Because before you used to have to wait like half a year before you can get into the program. And then we start a new class and start a new class. But right now, I think there's a way to insert additional people because we're doing Agile. So I'm actually looking to try that out for next month. So
okay, I think that one is better so that because sometimes you wait and then you get discouraged or find another sense.
Right, exactly.
When you find out that thing you are doing, it's difficult to come back again.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, we're looking at Agile format type of training, which is good because Agile is actually the trend now. A lot of organizations are doing Agile, so to help you guys also learn some of that. Woodson, you have a question? We'll take this last question, and then we have to drop.
Okay, thank you.
Woodson?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, okay, wait, you mentioned that as a contract employee, it's a direct supervisor that signed the SAR, right? Am I right?
Well, signs any document. It's usually a full-time employee that signs any formal, official corporate document. So your SSP being an official document, it should be a full-time federal employee that signs it.
Okay, let's say you do that. Okay, normally they're supposed to review before they sign. So let's just say you're not working there anymore and you wrote the document and maybe a couple of months down the line, there was like an error. You're not held liable since you didn't sign it.
Right. I mean, yeah, as a contractor, we just kind of provide the services and then we leave. So, yeah, I think you won't be liable yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry. If CNN calls or Congress calls for a hearing, they're going to call.
You're not the one. Okay.
Oh my God.
At least I haven't been called yet, so I think we're good.
I have one more thing to say about this. It's so funny. So the fact that she asked that, literally, when I went through, like I'm going through this, training and everything, I literally thought you go straight to the AO to have it authorized, but no, you gotta go through the higher person. And now she helped me out. I found out it's called a direct supervisor. Literally, you just go to straight. Like, no, you don't do that.
Oh no, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you kind of go through you always want to go through there. That's too high up.
Yeah.
definitely with all of that.
Mm.
All right, guys, this has been fun. Hope to see everybody on Wednesday.
One-
Yeah, what's up?
Well, after the completion of this class, can you write CSAM or it's like a third level?
CISM.
CISM?
Oh, CISM. Okay, I thought you said CSAM. I'm like, what? No, you want to study for CISM. You know, a lot of things that we do here is more real life, right? We're not certification focused. We have cert classes, but there's a
Mhm.
difference between studying for an exam and studying for, you know, the actual work. I know that this class, a lot of people have said it's helped them pass the CAP, right?
Yes, yes,
It's
yes.
other than cert. So I think that's probably the closest one. If you're with you doing like a lot of the technical work, it will help you for sure. So you know, definitely help.
I hear that the CAP, you know, they changed the name.
You said a CAP?
Yeah, they changed the name for CAP.
They did? No, I wasn't even aware.
To
Yeah.
What did they change it to?
I forgot. It's something engineering, you know, so, but compliance. I forgot it, you know. They sent a text message. Somebody sent a text message to me.
They changed it to certified governance, risk and compliance.
That's it. Thank you.
Certified
Wow.
in governance, risk and compliance. Yeah, they just changed it on February 12th or 16th. Yep.
CCRC. Okay. Okay, there it is.
So,
CCRC. Interesting.
yeah, okay.
Interesting. Good for them. Whatever they want to call it.
Olive wrote the exam last week. She said it was cool.
Yeah, I think they changed it so that
I
sometimes when you say
agree.
CAP on your
Hey, yo.
unexpensive, sometimes when you say CAP in your you know, resume, people don't even understand it. But if you say something like compliance, they understand
That's
it better.
true.
So I believe that's the reason why they changed it.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Okay, thank you so much for
Yeah, so it's so
the
good to see
webinar.
everybody on this call. So I'm glad you guys can join. There'll be more. In fact, I'll probably do some. I want to do more, right? And even more technical ones. Maybe have like, you know, hack labs and things like that for beginners and things of that nature. So if you're not, I think everybody here is on our WhatsApp chat. You know, we do a lot of chatting over there. So if you're not on there, definitely shoot me an email and I'll definitely love that.
Yeah, can you put it in my email so that I'm not in your chat? And
Yeah, we're on the WhatsApp, Paul. So
okay.
yeah, we'll wrap. Shoot me an email with your number, and I'll text you.
You want me to give you my phone number?
Yeah, if you want to do it now or later.
Yeah, let me. Yeah, I can give you right now if you have.